edition of Travel World 95. I'm Stephen Pickford. Glad you could join us. On today's program, with summer fast approaching, vacation ideas are sprouting. But what happens if you can't get out of town to take those few days away, or you've got out-of-town family or friends visiting? What do you do with those people? Steve Cornish of Autocar Connoisseur Greyline in Montreal will be joining us later on to let us in on some ideas for day trips, what to show people around our town. But first, weekend getaways. They're the fastest growing segment of the travel business. More and more people are opting for those 3-4 day getaways rather than the traditional 2 or 3 week vacation period. More Montrealers are also sticking closer to home, staying in Canada this year because of the value of the Canadian dollar. Joining us now to let us in on two very distinctive areas that many Montrealers are starting to spend a little more time in, both Huronia area north of Toronto and Toronto itself. I'm pleased to be joined today in studio by a man many of you may remember as the anchor of the CTV National News. You might have one of his novels on your bookshelf. He wrote The Heroin Merchants. Now he's one of Canada's leading travel writers. Welcome to Travel World 95, Vic Phillips.
Thank you, Stephen. Glad to be here.
Well, glad you could make it down to be with us today. Now, we were talking earlier before we came into the studio about one of your favorite Ontario destinations, that being the region of Huronia, north of Toronto. But Huronia is sort of a concept that many Montrealers can't really envision. So if you could let our viewers in on where it is, how to get there.
Yeah, like the first 5 letters of Huronia is Huron, so the area is named after the Huron Native Indians who were settled there hundreds of years ago. And consequently, it's called Huronia. It's located just north of Toronto, less than an hour's drive. And I'm sure some of your viewers have heard of towns like Barrie, Ontario, Orillia, Ontario. Well, they're all located just 40-50 minutes by car or by train north of the city. Superhighway all the way. And the area consists of some beautiful resorts, tremendous resorts, large, full-scale, posh luxury resorts. And, of course, the basis of the area, too, is history. It's scenic, it's beautiful, it's tranquil. So people go there for 2 reasons: to relax, to get away from the big city. The setting is totally picturesque there. The wildlife is unbelievable. Flowers. The area for bird watchers is just fantastic. But of course the history is the Huron Indians and the Jesuit priests who came and turned them on to Christianity several hundred years ago.
Right, because we noticed, because we traveled there last year, that really it's the whole area around the town of Midland and Penetanguishene where all of these historical events really are centered upon. We have, you know, the Ste. Marie among the Hurons provincial historic site, which really recreates in a very natural environment what went on back in the period 1639 to 1649 when the Jesuits were the first to really enter that area.
Yeah, it's a pioneer era, and you certainly get that feel when you're there. It shows how the natives lived at that time, how they cooked, how they hunted, how they fished. And then we have a genuine reconstruction of a 17th century Jesuit mission, which is really something to see. It's like entering a time machine when you go up in that area. And as I say, it's only a short hop. So for visitors to Toronto, they want to get away from the city even for a couple of hours. It's a short drive. Right,
and if they also want to learn more about the Indian culture itself, just down the road in the town of Midland is the Huronia Museum, where there's recreated Indian village, artifacts dating back over 11,000 years. So if somebody's really interested in learning more about the way the Indians lived, the Huronia region will really let them in on that.
That's right. Very few people know much about Canadian history. You know, many Canadians, like myself, I'm a Civil War buff, but that's American history. And the American West is so well known, but we have an exciting history too. And if you want a fast history lesson, history used to be boring in school. Canadian history, I found in my era. But now when I go to a place like Orillia, I get right into it, absorb it, and then I want to run to a bookstore and buy a book about our history. It really is exciting. But another thing about Orillia too, if you're not into that, tremendous golf courses. One of the top resorts in the Orillia area is Horseshoe Valley. It's near Barrie, Ontario. And it has what they say is the 2nd or 3rd finest golf course in Ontario. And the resort itself, if you're not into golfing, there's tennis, swimming pools, horseback trails, and bird watching. It's just great up there. And there are a number of those resorts.
Right, a number of those, because also over closer to the western end of Huronia in Collingwood is the Cranberry Resort. And Cranberry Resort, it too offers like 120 units, golfing, tennis, boating right on the shores of Lake Huron. So again, as Canadians, we quite often don't think that there are such type of resorts really just hours down the highway from us.
Yeah, and Cranberry just recently built a championship golf course. In fact, I'm going to be playing on that in the next few weeks probably, I hope to. And it is another great area. And the food there, by the way, is just fantastic. I had my best breakfast in all my travels around the world, my best breakfast ever, at the Cranberry Resort last summer. I won't go into it. The omelet makes my mouth water. It's that good.
Right, and you really wouldn't think that a hotel in an area like Huronia would really adhere to such culinary traditions.
Right.
And also, Huronia is known for the world's longest freshwater beach, Wasaga Beach, 14 kilometers long, something to behold as well. It caters more to the family market.
Family market. It had a reputation as a hangout for the teenage people years ago. They would go there, and other areas like Grand Bend, which is in Western Ontario. But the teenagers come up from the States, and they still like to hang out at Wasaga Beach. But they're well behaved now. It's well patrolled by the police. It's a safe area. Another thing before I forget, one area I want to mention up there is if you're into military history, and we've just celebrated VE Day, is Camp Borden. They have an excellent museum. I was there last year visiting that museum. And the artifacts from Canada's involvement in the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, and I didn't even realize until I went up there, we had a little bit role to play in the Vietnam War too. And tremendous, from the Air Force, Navy, and Army, weaponry, uniforms, and the role that Canada played. It's really
right,
something
it's
to
really
see.
a world-class museum.
And that's on a military base,
right on a military base.
And you're shown the area by soldiers.
Right. Now, if we're finished with the Huronia region, somebody also wants to combine it with Toronto. Toronto is now also a theater town, much better than Broadway. The theaters, I mean, Ed Mirvish has really revitalized the theater district with his Royal Alexandra and Princess of Wales theater complexes. You can get a theater ticket for less dollars than you would on Broadway and be in a nicer theater and see a performance as good or better than anything on Broadway.
Well, Toronto is now considered #3 in the world in terms of theater by theater people. #1, New York. #2, London, England's West End, and then Toronto. As you say, Ed Mirvish has just done a tremendous job, and part of our area near the water where Ed has built his theaters, it looks a little bit like Broadway, and you get that Broadway feeling in the restaurants and in the theaters. And of course, our top-run shows like Showboat was in Toronto for a long time before the original cast moved on to Broadway in New York. Showboat still has a little bit of time left to run in Toronto, but we're getting plays in Toronto, and then they move directly on to New York.
Right. Now, also part of the whole theater experience, somebody goes for a weekend, they look to places to stay, and of course you mentioned to me 2 properties that, again, we wouldn't normally consider. Maybe there's the Camberley Club Hotel, which you were telling me was on the 28th floor of an office tower, the Scotiabank Tower building. You wouldn't even know it was there, but I would say it would be basically geared to a more romantic getaway with the in-room jacuzzis and that. Glad you let us in on that one. But a lot of families are also staying at the Delta Chelsea Inn, good rate downtown. They have the Children's Creative Center, games room, that sort of thing, really geared for the family. But also part of that whole experience as well. You've got a place to stay, you're staying at the theater, then we go into dining. Where would you take somebody for a fine meal in Toronto?
Well, my favorite spot, and I haven't been there for a couple of years, but my favorite spot is Bigliardi's Steakhouse. It's on Church Street, right beside, just up the street from Maple Leaf Gardens. And it's the kind of place where you'll see NHL hockey players. The Major League Baseball teams have discovered it, so when they're in town, they pop in there. So it's a meat place, but it's a high-class steak place. That's one of my favorites. And heading further east, another place I like to eat is at the Guild Inn on the Scarborough Bluffs. It looks like England in that area, in old England. And those are 2 places I would recommend.
Right, I know, like when I go to Toronto, really like Chinese food. I know you're not a big Chinese food buff, but Lychee Gardens, which is an institution in the city, one of the finest Chinese meals you can get anywhere, and that's located right down near the Delta Chelsea Inn at Bay and Dundas. Now, with regards to attractions, we've got just a couple of minutes left here. So attractions, if somebody comes from out of town, they don't want to get stuck with all the tourist traps and things. What is good value? What would you take your best friends to see?
Okay, a couple of my relatives just visited. They're Americans living in the Chicago area. And this is in the order. They wanted to see the Dome because they have the White Sox, so they're heavy into baseball in Chicago. So I took them to the Dome where the Jays play, and it really is a stadium worthwhile seeing. Then I took them for dinner to the CN Tower. It's a revolving restaurant high above the city. You can see the United States from the tower, and it's just beautiful up there. The Art Gallery of Ontario, which recently hosted the Barnes exhibit. For art lovers, they'll know what I'm talking about. The Royal Ontario Museum, the finest in Canada. Then the Science Center is great if you have children to walk around, look at all the experiments being done by scientists. We have great ethnic neighborhoods in Toronto. I don't know if Montreal has them like we do, but we have a Greek area, a Chinese area, a Polish area, a Russian area, an Italian area with great restaurants, their own bookstores, clothing stores, churches. And they're very much reminiscent of Chicago. It's really worthwhile
seeing. There's just so much to see in Toronto, and I guess it's really what they mean when they say so much to discover in Ontario. Want you back later this season, Vic Phillips. You've got so much to tell us about your world travels. Great man to have on our show. I'm glad you could join us here on Travel World 95.
Thank you for having me.
And now let's drop by the Travel Corner, see what's going on there this week.
Hi. Today on Travel Corner, we're going to be looking at some travel accessories that I brought from our store on Laurier Street called Jet Setter. When you're traveling, it's nice to have a few conveniences with you, so I brought along some things to show you what's out there for your convenience. I can start with this water bottle holder. Everybody travels with water now, and especially with the summer months coming along, it's going to be hot, and you need some way to keep your water cool. This is an insulated holder, and you can put a 1.5 liter standard water bottle in it, and you can carry it over the shoulder with a nice carrying handle, and it easily unzips, opens up so that you can put your bottle inside. And if you put the bottle in the freezer and take it with some frozen water, you should have cold water for at least 8 hours during the day. And there's a handy cap on top that you can easily drink from. So that's a nice way to carry water when you're traveling. And there's a second size for the standard 0.5 liter bottles. I happen to have Gatorade in mine, which is great to take along to games or give the kids for lunch or juices. So these are handy to take with you traveling or at home. And if we stay on the theme of drinking, water is always important when you're traveling. We have purifiers. I brought one today to show you that's very efficient. It's a purifier that works very simply. It's an 8-ounce cup with a purifier inside, and all you have to do is pour the water slowly through the purifier, and everything that comes out from the purifier is instantly cleaned of all parasites, bacteria, viruses, everything. And you can use the cup that comes with it for drinking, or you can simply take the purifier part and fill up any container, or you can simply place it under the faucet, and if you want to brush your teeth, the water that comes through is perfect for brushing teeth and things like that. So that is the water purifier, made by WaterTech, used by NASA, used by the Peace Corps and embassies all over the world. And then for the coffee lovers, there's a lot of different kinds of coffee makers out. The one I brought is by Philips, and they're international companies, so they work really anywhere. What you have here is basically a pot. Inside you have a coil. You can heat up boiled water. You can also use it if you want to make spaghetti or soup. And it comes with 2 cups, and it comes with containers for sugar and milk and whatever you need. And you even get your wonderful coffee filter that fits right in. And that's a real handy way to travel if you want to take along some tea and coffee and soup. And certainly there are some countries where you need to bring something along with you. And we think we have time for one more quick item here. With summer coming and the mosquitoes coming, I wanted to show you this cap made right here in Montreal. Fits like a baseball cap, ordinary baseball cap. But what you have hidden right in the front here is a mosquito net that protects the head, rolls out, and you just place that right over your head and put your arms through the 2 straps, and you have perfect protection from the mosquitoes, whether you're traveling in Africa or if you're gardening, golfers, whoever needs this cap. It's very handy to wear. And then when you're finished with your net, you just roll it back up and it tucks away in this pocket right in front. And very clever design. One more object that you might find convenient when you're traveling or even here at home in Montreal. It's a regular belt, cotton twill belt, nice finish on it with leather. When you're wearing it, nobody would suspect that inside you have a full-length zipper to hide your money, rolled up right inside, and that way nobody can detect when you're wearing this that you actually have something hidden on it, which is a very good way to hide your belongings when you're traveling. I think that's all for today. I'll be back with some more products to show you, so thank you very much.
And welcome back. Always something interesting to see on the Travel Corner. And now joining us in studio is Steve Cornish. He's Director of Operations for Autocar Connoisseur, Grey Line of Montreal. Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much.
Now, Montrealers have seen over the past couple of years sort of a change in franchisees in the Grey Line operations here, and Autocar Connoisseur may not be that known, so why don't we start off just by talking a little bit about the background of your firm.
Okay, Connoisseur originally started out as a bus charter operator. We began in 1983, and we actually got into the sightseeing business fairly early on, around '84, and mostly operated a small city tour from the east end of Montreal until we eventually took over in 1989 the Grey Line franchise that was operated up until then by the city of Montreal.
Okay, now Grey Line is a franchise operation, as you alluded to. How does this set the standards? When we go to some other city, how are we certain that there's sort of going to be a standard all along?
Well, Grey Line is the largest motor coach, charter operation and sightseeing operation organization in the world. We operate Grey Line tours much the same in Montreal as is operated in Europe, Asia, as far as South America. It runs on basically the same principle. We have a code of ethics that we must follow, a certain type of vehicle, a certain length of tour, etc.
Okay, so you can be pretty certain that when you go to Grey Line in Montreal or you go to Grey Line in Hong Kong, you've got that sort of overall uniformity and you can be certain of the product. I think that's important for the consumer to know that there's a name that he recognizes. And also Grey Line as a whole has become more user-friendly over the last couple of years. You've instituted toll-free lines. I see you brought us to show us, you maybe could hold it up, I don't know whether the camera can get it, the Grey Line guide, which makes it a lot easier to find out what's going on in other cities. How, as the operation evolved, why has the company now decided to market itself more fully?
Well, this in fact is, this being the Grey Line travel guide, this book is actually distributed to all travel agencies in North America, Europe, Asia, and we are part of the travel file computer online, which you can see is on the back of our, so we have toll-free numbers, we have immediate access into the travel file, which is Apollo, Gemini, and that all the airlines use. So we've really become worldwide as far as a direct connection to the Montreal Grey Line goes.
Okay, now, as we talked about earlier, you've got a number of tours going on in Montreal this summer. People are coming in with out-of-town guests. They may also want to know a bit more about their city. Can you give us a summary of some of the major tours and how long, what do you see on them?
Well, of course, we operate from the basis of your more or less standard city tour, which we offer in 4 different variations, depending on length of time, and obviously the cost would be a factor in it. Going from 2.5 hours right up to a full day or 6.5-hour tour, in which we visit the Olympic Tower and a lot of other places, on top of having the commented city tour by the tour guide. We also operate other tours up into the Laurentian Mountains for a full day in the Laurentians, including a meal. We operate a full day tour to Quebec City. But what we've done, because, again, operating under the Grey Line image, we are the Grey Line of Montreal. Therefore, all of the tours that we operate, and this year we plan to operate 10, come back to Montreal at the end of the day. Obviously, we want our tourists to stay in Montreal and see as much as they can of Montreal.
Right, so you don't basically just provide the transportation, make a multi-length tour, because I know like some cities, they'll start packaging 2- and 3- and 4-day tours still through Grey Line, but they'll take you to another city and also provide the accommodations. Do you have any plans to maybe expand your portfolio in that regard?
Up to this point, we have not. We have said that we would like our tourists, again, to stay in Montreal. So actually what we have done is we've offered packages for out-of-town tourists to come to Montreal, including hotel rooms and other additional things that we've added into the packages, but they're strictly Montreal packages. All of the tours that go out of town come back to Montreal at the end of the day.
Now, on your tours, do you require reservations?
No, you don't. Actually, you can get reservations if you want to be absolutely sure of having a seat on the Quebec tour, which is very popular in the summer. But reservations are not necessary. You just show up at the Info Tourist Center, which is Montreal's tourist center, and we leave from there. And
do you offer, if somebody's coming from another part of the city, do you offer a shuttle bus service to get them to hook up to that tour?
Yes, we do. We have pickup service at nearly every hotel, be it major or even the smaller hotels. And we actually, our brochure and our products are sold in over 100 hotels.
Okay, now you also talked about how your company's roots were in the charter business. What are the most popular charter destinations these days for Montrealers? Where are people renting buses to go to?
Well, of course, the most popular charter destination, I would say, outside of the province of Quebec, because of course Quebec City is a big one, would be New York City. We definitely have a huge number of groups going to New York City every year. Atlantic City used to be an extremely popular destination and used to be added in with a New York City tour, but of course now Montreal has its own casino, so Atlantic City has become a little less popular.
Right, that kind of dilutes the traffic because people don't have to go too far afield now to get their gambling fix if that's what they're into. And chartering a bus sometimes seems to frighten some people. It's like they wonder, how do we look for the best charter company? What do we look for? What do we ask the charter operator to make sure we're getting the best deal, but also the best service?
Well, obviously, I would say that you certainly, in any city where a Grey Line operation exists, you can certainly trust the Grey Line banner. There are certain, as I say, a code of ethics and a type of service that Grey Line must provide in order to keep its franchise. But on top of that, I would say definitely you should go with a charter operator that was well known. If you're staying in a hotel, most of the hotels know the good charter operators because they deal with them every day.
Okay, and also to check what type of equipment they have, to make sure they have a modern fleet. And also, I guess, to make sure they've got the proper insurance coverage. I know this is particularly a problem in the United States that with the breakout sort of the monopoly, it seemed, in the charter market that Greyhound had, and sort of more the demise of the trailway system, a lot of the smaller operators got into it. They didn't have the proper insurance coverage, and it became a dicey situation. So I guess insurance is also a major issue to see how much insurance coverage that operator has. Now, if we progress to other corporate services you may have. Now, again, the beginning of the book talks about Grey Line involving itself in meetings and conventions and transfers. How big a operation is that in Montreal?
Well, for Connoisseur Grey Line, it definitely is a major part of our operation. We operate transportation services for most of the major conventions coming to Montreal. principally because of the size of our fleet, of the location of our fleet, which is right downtown. I believe we're the only bus company right downtown Montreal. And also, we are the official carrier for both Montreal airports. So operating out of Dorval and Mirabel towards Montreal gives us quite an access to the market.
Right, so you have a scheduled service that operates from both airports, so you really don't have to drive, especially to Mirabel. This is always a concern to somebody. You don't have to drive. Where would somebody pick up the bus to go to one of these airports?
In fact, the organization which has taken over from Transport Canada, which is called ADM, or Aéroport de Montréal, operates their own terminus in downtown Montreal at the corner of La Gauchetière and University. And there is an Air Canada check-in counter, as well as all the bus departures right from this terminus downtown.
Now, has there been any thought given, like I know in some cities they've gone to almost like I know it's a registered trademark operated by the Super Shuttle Company, but doing a door-to-door type service. Has there been any thought to expand that type of concept into Montreal?
Not a door-to-door service as such. We do, again, hotel pickups, and we shuttle via minibus service directly from any of the downtown hotels or the major hotels, even as far as the South Shore, in fact, to the ADM terminus where they pick up our regular bus.
So they make a transfer there. Also, another type of service that is seen in other cities. I know you've reconfigured some of your buses. There's a picture on your current brochure on making it more resembling an old-time, old-fashioned tram coach. But does this sort of follow like a schedule route and you can get on and off, or is it a fixed length tour?
The Grey Line tours, we have adopted the fixed tour way to operate our tours, in that we've discovered over the years that the average tourist, not being very familiar with the city and our attractions being fairly far apart, if I use the Olympic Stadium as an example, most of the tourists prefer the tour where they have the guide, they have the bus with them all the time, and they really never feel lost.
Right, because sometimes they might get off in another part of town and they have to wait 20, 30 minutes for another bus to come along on a trolley route, and it might frighten them if they get off at a certain part of the city they may not be familiar with. It may work well if all the attractions are nearby, like in the center core of the city, you know?
That's right. That kind of system really only works well in a downtown, like from here to the old port and back again. It might work. Otherwise, I can't see that kind of system. It scares the tourists.
Steve Cornish of Grey Line in Montreal, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Till next time, I'm Stephen Pickford. Happy traveling, everyone.